Okay, for anybody who happens to be new, I posted the link to our meeting minutes in the chat. And I'll share screen here. Maybe not. Oh, can people see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Let's see. The Minigo team here?
That's me, actually. I just wanted to say hi. So Minigo is an open source rewrite of AlphaGo. That's part of TensorFlow.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, it's super cool. We just open sourced it last week. So we're looking at Kubeflow, and we're hoping to participate in the SIG big data. So you'll see us around. I just wanted to let you guys know what we're about. TensorFlow/Minigo.
So what? Tell me about like what your. I'm curious, like what your roadmap is with Kubeflow.
That's a good question. We're working with Jeremy to figure out what a Kubeflow integration looks like. Right now, it's just a raw Kubernetes cluster that spins up a bunch of GPUs. But we'd love to use Kubeflow.
Yeah.
Or like just CC them on your doc.
Did you have any? Did you have any particular lines of interest with this SIG here, the big data SIG, or?
Well, we're kind of curious, what people are currently doing and trying to incorporate current best practices into Minigo as kind of a showcase of big data stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's machine learning, but there's also just like handling terabytes of Go games.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you guys are working with so something I'm working on right now is trying to figure out how to do Kubeflow style model management. Specifically, let's say you have a single model that you're training, and then you want to, let's say, retrain it and then serve it, as well as, let's say, use transfer learning and build upon like models that are already being serviced. I was wondering if you guys are working with
That's not something we're working on, but something we are totally interested in. Right now, it's like super simple. I think our state of the art is just running a script on someone's computer, and like the next state of the art was just running a prod on Kubernetes. So something like that would be amazing.
Okay, I'll coordinate with you later on that, because that's something I'm trying to set up for the project between Selden and Kubeflow. So if you guys,
that would be great.
We could definitely collaborate on that.
Yeah. You can ping me jhoke at Google.
Perfect.
Have you scheduled any demos either with like the Kubeflow meetings or here or anywhere else? Because I'm super interested in just catching something like that.
We don't want to be surprised.
Yeah, it's super raw right now. Definitely like David Aronchik from Kubeflow is trying to get us to give a demo in the Kubeflow team. But I mean, next couple of weeks we should have something demoable.
That's great. Well, cool. Welcome to the SIG. Thanks for coming. And let's see. I had no other general announcements. If anybody does, feel free to chime in. I guess the big Spark status right now is they're waiting for one blocker for going for the next release candidate. So holding pattern there. I did see that we got billing for the Kube backend in Databricks 2.3 announcement email. So we've got that bit of publicity, and I did file a JIRA just to get people aware of making sure that it gets into the actual Apache Spark release announcement as well. So I think we're on their radar appropriately there.
I have one announcement to share. This is Kim from Takadata. Ilan and I are going to give a talk on the upcoming Strata San Jose in March. The topic is basically HDFS integration on Kubernetes. But since this is like the right timing for making people the Kubernetes support in Spark version 2.3, I think we can also talk more about that. So I was wondering if you guys have any feedbacks.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, whenever you have a deck ready, I guess if you're interested in feedback, you could run it by us, but just
We'll
generally.
probably send a deck out on Monday.
Yeah.
So we'll put that out.
Yeah,
so
we're working on the deck. Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm not sure whether this is an announcement or not, but I had some stuff that I wanted to talk about with respect to the state of the integration testing.
I gave it. That's got a bullet point down below. Yeah,
It does?
it does.
Yep.
Oh,
Right.
there it is. I see I status. I see it now.
Yep.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, I mean, that was next, so I definitely wanted to hear about it.
Right. So I started to look at the why our integration tests weren't running against that PR. So there's two different things. There is having the integration tests from the Spark-integration repo, the separate repo, run against Apache Spark on K8s/Spark, and having the old version of the integration tests that's embedded in the Apache Spark on K8s/Spark repo run on the same PR, right? So because the Spark integration repo is targeted to work mainly against the upstream Spark, it doesn't easily run on Apache Spark on K8s/Spark, because between the 2.2 and the 2.3 and between changes that were made during the process of upstreaming, many things about the Spark distribution changed. The way that the Dockers are built changed, the way the containers are named is changed. So Eric and I had a quick chat on Slack a few days ago, basically saying, hey, do we think we want to explore getting the Spark integration repo to work against the fork version of Spark? And we kind of said maybe not, because it'll be much easier once we rebase the fork on 2.3. So I kind of want to talk about what's the state of that. But we think that if we could just get the old version of the integration tests, the ones that are embedded in the fork, working for right now, that would be pretty good. They don't seem to work against these PRs right now, because these PRs, and it's just unfortunate that we're in this state, these PRs are no longer mergeable. So I don't think that the tests can automatically run at all.
Yeah, I have that problem as well.
Yeah, so they're two, I guess, I think that the right answer there is that the PRs need to be changed so that they can merge, so that our existing Pepper Data Jenkins robot that tries to run against the in Spark repo in the fork version of the integration test can run.
Yeah.
I think we need to get the merging working. And neither integration test will run when merging doesn't work. Nothing's going to work, I think.
Yeah. What was the? I thought we had asked if Eric could get his PR up against the actual Apache master, but I can't remember.
Well, so yesterday he said on Slack that basically he does want to take another look at these PRs, and it was kind of vague, but I assume he means to make them mergeable again, or maybe to upstream it. I'm not sure about that second part. But he was working on some other stuff and isn't going to have time to do it this week.
Oh, that's right. He was busy with the demo.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, for all the obvious reasons, it would be ideal if you could get those just up against the Apache master.
Right.
Otherwise,
So I guess I'll, if there's something I didn't do because I got stuck once they wouldn't merge, and I'll make sure that the Jenkins pull request builder, just with a dummy change, does actually still run on the Pepper-Data Jenkins. I think it should, but I'll make sure of that. But apart from that, mainly I think on that particular PR, we need to wait for Eric to update it, unless somebody wants to take it over, and I certainly can't. The other question I have though is, what's the status of trying to have a rebase of, I don't know if the right word is rebase really, but to have a 2.3 branch in our fork with new PRs, any PRs that aren't against 2.3, ported to work on that 2.3 branch.
I think originally we had sort of decided we'd wait until the actual 2.3 release was cut.
Okay. Maybe that should be open.
That I know of, nothing is, no work on that has happened.
But 2.3 branch already exists in the upstream repo, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to actually wait for actual release of 2.3.
That's true. Presumably any release will be minorly different than what's actually in the Spark / branch 2.3.
I would expect that I guess if you got a rebase going now, you could just consume whatever changes get finalized pretty fast.
I have to imagine.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that most of the work is making our changes on top of the Apache Spark repo work on the new branch.
I would agree with that.
So how do we want to do that? Do we want to just make a 2.3 branch and try to apply everything that can, try to apply all CLs that can, and ask the authors on the ones that can't?
Well, there's the PRs, which I think as far as like people's individual PRs go, that's probably what you would do. There's also, I guess the tricky bit is that we've got components in our existing branch which kind of don't exist in the upstream. And that's like where things get weird, because we've got like, that stuff was manually extracted when they made the upstream branch, and I think it would have to be manually reintegrated.
Yeah.
And then that's the hard part. I mean, I think if you got that far, I would bet that a lot of the other stuff would be relatively easy to, all the individual PRs would probably be quote unquote easy to get synced up again.
So Inan has the most experience, right, in extracting, right, what now became the stream part from our fork. So Inan, what's your assessment of doing this rebasing kind of work on the fork? How long do you think it will take?
So I don't think it will take a lot of time or take too long. Well, actually, most of the time for the upstreaming is for the code review. So the actual time spent on extracting the bits out is not that much, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess we should be able to do a 2.3 branch maybe in a couple weeks. Well, we can actually start now because I don't think there will be any major changes to the 2.3 branch upstream anyway. And even if there's any changes, they won't affect us because we don't have any changes to the KDS backend. So,
would it be strategically useful to like turn this around a little bit instead of saying, oh, let's get a backported rebase onto our repo, basically do the same thing but cast it as something up against Apache Master, like a candidate 2.4, a preliminary 2.4?
Yeah, I think yes, actually, was especially for newly coming PRs, they should definitely, if ever possible, they should be against the master upstream. I guess the major reason we want to have a branching our fork is to make testing easier, and also if there's anything that people really want, but so we can't really keep up the speed of upstreaming these features, then it's probably good to have a fork.
I suppose it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If you get the one down here, it can become the basis for something that gets ported against the master too. So it probably doesn't save any work.
Well, I think we should probably just start doing that, like porting all the features we have, but have not been upstreamed yet into a fork, into a 2.3 fork, something like that.
Sounds exhausting.
Yeah. Well, one thing is I think that's helpful is that also helps us for the future upstreaming of these features, because we can get a first round of review internally before we actually put up our PRs against upstream. I don't know. Also, one of the biggest feedback I actually got, while working on upstreaming is actually a lot of the comments on the review were about code style, formatting, these cosmetic changes. We probably can actually do that, while building the 2.3 branch. So we will have less time, spent on dealing with those kind of comments when things get upstreamed.
That's probably a good idea. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, is that, am I hearing Yinan? You said you'd be up for doing this?
Yeah, I can definitely start this.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. So I was interested in discussing a little bit the design doc for the pod initialization refactoring. I had dropped a couple comments on it last week, but I'm not sure. I haven't looked at it in the last day or so. So
cool. Marcelo had a couple of comments there. I'm going to incorporate them The idea behind Marcel's comments was to make you only have to have a single step type for both driver and executor, and you only use like the pod part of the step. So like a step is like a composition of like three functions, and you only use like one of the three functions in the executor initialization, but you use all three of them for the driver. It's roughly that's like maybe an oversimplified and less precise way of explaining like what he wanted to do, but the idea there here is that well, we had a whole discussion on the comment thread, and we agreed that this would be a good way to try to reduce the amount of like code and the amount of traits. But the trade-off is that we're in the executor code creation code is specifically you're using a step where you're only using like one of the three parts of like the interface, which seems a little inaccurate and could come back to bite us later if we need the flexibility of like breaking things apart. But for now, we can go with this kind of design and see like down the road if the inaccuracy / lack of flexibility is going to hurt us in the long run. That was probably a pretty long-winded explanation. Go check out the proposal document if you would like to see it more precisely worded and more detail.
Okay, so the idea is backing off of the kind of like two types to enforce what the API differences actually are.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to encode more like specifically in the API. Like we wanted to encode more specifically in the API that creating executors only involves creating pods and nothing else. But we can afford to be a little inaccurate here and say like a Kubernetes. Like I kind of want to think of it roughly as a Kubernetes feature rather than like a config step, where like a Kubernetes feature involves like configuring like a pod, like any given pod, and also configuring like the driver in a way that's like specific to that feature. So a feature can be like you support Hadoop Kerberos, and the only relevant parts of the feature that are involved in creating the executor configuring the pod, but the relevant parts of the feature configuring the driver is doing like all of these things. So you kind of think of it that way.
Doesn't he want to put most of the work in the orchestrator?
Sorry?
Does he want to put most of the work on the orchestrator?
Yeah, the orchestrator will pick. So the idea is like the orchestrator will pick like what features. Sorry, the orchestrator will pick what features to add and what what parts of the feature has to be used. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like I want to pick the Hadoop Kerberos feature, and the executive orchestrator says, okay, from the Hadoop Kerberos feature, I only want to like apply like the configuration as a pod.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know if the class. I don't know if the class names would become too long to encode that, but I hope.
I also think it might be.
I guess as long as it's like clearly delineated in a documentation, it kind of like there's pieces that aren't used everywhere and it's contextual. It seems like one of those things which could be a bug factory, but as long as it's super clear to anybody going into the code, like parts of the API aren't always used by every component.
I think that's a good idea. If this is going to be used by many people going forward, then I think there has to be a documentation about the API.
Sorry, can you say that again?
So you're proposing a API for each pod that each pod orchestration step will be using, right? So can you have a short design document that describes the API? I guess that's my suggestion.
That's what the design doc is, though, in essence.
Do you already have such a design doc? If that's the case, then I'm fine. Yeah.
Somewhat. I mean, it's very vague. Obviously, it'll require like documentation, like more documentation. Okay. But yeah, you're right, though.
Yeah.
I think just, I mean, I'm probably beating a dead horse. It just means that if you're losing some of the constraints provided by a separate type, you need to sort of like compensate for that by making the documentation explain what the implied constraints are. That's all.
Yeah, I think also we can make the orchestrator APIs make it very clear like what the contract is. But I have to bang out some of the code for that to come up with some ideas. But I agree. Yeah, if we end up having to go with too broad of an API, then yeah, we'll probably have to write documentation for future developers.
Cool.
But once Marcelo gives the green light, Matt, we should probably start specking out a roadmap. Maybe.
Elon, we could start by removing the init container.
Okay, yeah, I can do that now.
Regardless of that's something we should do regardless of what.
Yeah, I don't think Marcelo's gonna be okay with not doing that. So either way,
so we'll do that. I'm gonna be unavailable for. I'm not gonna be available to actually like work on this until maybe a Tuesday, and that's being optimistic.
That's fine.
So we'll talk about. Well, we can chat offline as to like when we can tackle like the different components of this.
Sounds good.
I guess that reminds me of it's mentioned getting rid of the init container. What is like the vision for what the RSS looks like these days without that? Then is it still like the URL serving engine?
So I thought a bit about this. I think it would be good to take this discussion of the resource data server to the Apache community. And we can also, and I think in doing so, we want to bring in kind of like some of our experiences from like some of us having used it. I used it for a bit. I used it for a little bit, but we moved away from it in favor of making all of our resources into our pods. Sorry, not to our pods, and into our Docker containers. But if others have like discussed, if others have used it and like mentioned their, like, and maybe bring forth their experiences with it, like what workflows that it helped them solve, then that'll be good. This sounds like something that would probably be worth a broader discussion with the community. And also maybe getting some more context on. I think it will be useful for us to get from the community what the context was around Mesos. Mesos doesn't allow the same construct of like uploading local dependencies. And I guess like the question is like, could we have built a resource data server construct for that? And if so, like why did we like not do so? Was it just something that wasn't considered? I think getting some of the context as to whether or not the same decision making that can apply for Mesos also can apply for communities. There's just some directions that we could look into.
So, like, if I recall correctly, the Mesos guys were just kind of like punted on the whole thing and said, "Look, get your data exposed in the URL of your choice." And
yeah, Mesos doesn't support using Spark Submit to upload the dependencies from the submitting machine. But Yarn does if you have a valid Hadoop cluster. So again, like understanding like why, like the distinct why one was chosen for one and not the other, and so on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I have an idea of how, like, if we wanted to keep the resource data server, then we can do it without the init container. Instead, you can do the download from the Spark Submit entry point, because now the driver pod is running Spark Submit in client mode, but it's saying like it's in cluster mode. In such a setting, you can detect if there's configuration properties indicating that, hey, you should actually download this bundle from the resource data server, and Spark Submit itself can handle that. But there's the more fundamental question of like, is the resource data server the right tool and the right thing to be building in the first place? We think it makes sense, but it would be good to get community consensus on that.
Yeah.
Before actually like hammering down code and writing progress and all that stuff.
Do you want to start a thread on dev and just see what we get out of it?
Yeah, a Jira might also suffice. One or the other, or like one Likity data, etc. We'll start some kind of thread.
So unlike Yarn, right? For Kubernetes, we can always build custom Docker images, and put more jars. So that should be also, I think, the part of the discussion here.
Yeah, the idea that you actually have even more options in the Kubernetes world as opposed to. Although I guess Mesos you have Docker images now too. So that's not strictly. There's not strictly more, but if you don't run in Docker images in Mesos, then you have to put your devices somewhere.
Right. That's why Mesos guys said that's why Mesos guys are leaning toward not allowing dynamic unloading of jars. I mean, I don't know, but that's likely explanation.
Okay. Yeah, noted.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Data versus code depths.
Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting case because we've got everything from increasing the responsibilities of the RSS all the way to just simply not having one at all. So. Yeah. Cool. I do not see the Airflow folk today, but I see Vishnu is here, and I've heard rumors about the ML working group, so I'm definitely curious about that.
Hey, everyone.
Hi.
Hey.
I'm not sure I've met any of you, so apologies for showing up in the middle of the meeting and throwing something. So, thank you. So Ken Owens and I, we've been spending a lot of time trying to improve Kubernetes for machine learning. We've been working on this for the last 7 to 8 months now. And the thing is, I think we've gotten to a point where Kubernetes by itself can work for some basic machine learning tasks, but we notice that there are large gaps all through the system, starting from application integration to choosing the right kind of architecture, system architecture, and the right kind of data center design, for example, and how hardware isolation should work, and what are the kind of scheduling primitives that are necessary, and the networking topologies that are needed. And the list goes on a little bit because Kubernetes has primarily been focusing on stateless and then a little bit of stateful applications. And you guys are pushing the edge with Patch, but ML sort of pushes it to the other extreme where you need you need a high performance compute kind of guarantees. So the thing is we're considering having a working group in Kubernetes that is focused on just one thing, which is enabling machine learning applications on Kubernetes. So its goal is not to build any of them, but rather work with users and key vendors and make sure that all the use cases are captured and the required system design changes are identified. And then we'll work with the individual SIGs to drive changes in different parts of the system. And like I said, the goal is not to build any new apps, but then integrating existing apps would definitely be part of the charter there. But the thing is there's no point in having a working group unless there is sufficient interest in this. And so we've been going to different SIGs already and trying to find out if there's enough interest in this area and if it's a problem that other people are also looking to solve.
I think it's almost goes without saying that interest in ML on Kube is huge, right? Are you guys collecting anything anywhere, kind of use cases of? You mentioned 3 or 4 different areas of gaps there, and I was kind of making me wonder if that's being compiled anywhere with analyses of should this be something that needs actual modification of kube versus an approach like, what the Kubeflow community is up to, where it's kind of like more focusing on CRD types approaches and that kind of.
Yeah, I mean, CRDs are great for starting and iterating and getting things working. But there's once you start delving into it, there's always a large room for improvement. For example, even with the TensorFlow training CRD that's part of Kubeflow, you could improve that architecture quite a bit in order to make it more Kubernetes compatible, and also making sure that the resource choices you make there and are sort of compatible with Kubernetes, or you can extend Kubernetes to make sure that it meets Kubeflow's expectations, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is you can either take the approach of saying, okay, here's what Kube gives me, and I'm going to somehow build a system with that. Or you could take a slightly different approach and be okay, here's what Kube's giving, but then here's what I need. And then now I'm going to go figure out as a community how I can get to where I want to be. And I think in this space, Bloomberg has sort of pushed the edge already, as far as I can tell, based on conversations at KubeCon. Sorry, go ahead. Was someone trying to say something?
Oh no, I got excited. I'm sorry. You can keep going.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we also met a few other people who have been pushing the edge here. So I guess the goal is for us all to come together with a single goal in mind, and then as a community identify what are the key pain points that exist today, and then prioritize it together, and then identify key owners for each and every one of those pain points and drive that to completion. Since this is highly cross-functional, one way of dealing with this is just doing it from a ground-up manner, where I for a fact know 4 or 5 issues that we need to fix in the system. But then when it comes to prioritizing it, it's kind of difficult, right? We need the user input, and we need we need either direct contact with users or contact through vendors who then get feedback from users.
So there is one overlap between Spark and ML, right? Spark ML obviously exists. So do you guys expect some feedbacks from the SIG big data, in particular Spark ML side?
Yes, completely. I mean, Spark ML is one framework for running ML jobs in Kubernetes, right? It's probably not the only way, but then if it becomes a really popular way of running, then we want to make sure that it works really well. And so I think it'll benefit both Spark and Kubernetes, since this is a new space, for it to co-evolve sort of, in that you have feedback going in either directions.
Okay.
So you guys are probably engaged with the scheduling guys, because they're working hard on integrating support for, or better support for, GPU resource management. And
Yeah.
Correct. So I'm primarily part of that working group, which has been focusing on getting GPUs as a resource. I think we've gotten to a point where we can now start enabling users and empowering them. So there are many different problems to solve. For example, we don't have a good conformance story on what does it mean to consume an accelerator through Kubernetes. So like I said, there are many tracks to solve, and I've been more focusing on the scheduling and the nodes side. But I want to since we have spent more than 6 or 7 months in that space, now I want to diversify a little bit and start having direct user feedback. I mean, by me, I don't mean just me, in the sense that the group of us who have been doing that, we want to make sure that it meets the end user expectations and we are integrating with the right set of tools. And it makes sense overall, right? We want Kubernetes to succeed in this space, and for it to become the de facto choice. But that's not going to be easy, and it requires some work and some pre-planning and so on.
You guys have I'm not sure, just an online presence, a website, or someplace where you're collecting docs that people can look at? Or
yeah, so the thing is, by this week, maybe even by today, we'll be posting a request for creating a new working group. I think it's going to be sponsored by SIG apps. And so that then becomes the central point for collaborating as a community. And there'll be like a community page for it, and then we can collect docs there and so on. So that'll probably be the way for dealing with this working group.
Do you guys need any of us to come and vote you guys up anyway, or you'll pretty much?
Yeah, that'll be awesome. I mean, if there's enough interest expressed in the community, then I think that'll make it much obvious that we need a working group, and then we can take it from there.
So is there how best should we do that? Should we just attend the SIG apps meeting and make
so let's I don't want to decide the specifics here. Well, I just wanted to give a heads up that this is going to happen, and for people to join and participate if it makes sense. And we'll probably be figuring out the specific dynamics of how this sub community would be functioning through emails, or I don't know, like through Slack, for example. I mean, nothing exists today. We wanted to give everyone a heads up before we propose it. So the mechanics would obviously be available on GitHub very soon, once the working group is set up.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, definitely, I don't know, keep us in the loop, and if whenever it is you need us to like register support somewhere, just let us know and we can do that.
Sounds good. That's awesome. So my takeaway here is that there is interest, and there is a general agreement that something like a working group is going to be useful.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you everyone for your time.
Very interesting.
That's everything. I don't think Daniel's on the call, so I don't think he's doing Airflow right now.
No.
So that's all.
Yeah, that was all I had. If nobody has anything else to add, I guess we can quit a few minutes early.
Awesome.
So I just want people to know. So I have a rough design document for the name node HCA, HDFS on Kubernetes. So I'm thinking about turning the design doc into a markdown, readme.md or whatever, and then send a pull request to our HDFS repo, so that if anybody is interested, they can take a look.
That's awesome.
Yeah, can you stick a link here at this bottom? I just made a little section for that.
Sure. Yep. I can do that.
Oops. Can't type today. All right. Stop share. Are we done recording? No, we're not.
So I'm going to stop